On the morning of the 6th of July, Russia launched waves of missiles and drones at Ukraine, reportedly killing at least 18 people and wounding dozens. The attack exposed gaps in Ukraine's air defenses as the ballistic missiles fired by Russia hit their targets. The attack came just days after a Russian strike killed 31 people in Kyiv, the deadliest assault on the capital this year. This assault was the second on the capital and its surroundings in less than a week and came as both sides increased long-range attacks, underlining the growing reach of the war after Russia first launched its full-scale invasion. St. Petersburg, about 900 kilometers from Ukrainian-held territory, has occasionally come under attack from Kyiv's drones, but this time it did. On the 4th of July, a wave of Ukrainian long-range drones had struck the St. Petersburg region overnight, hitting an oil terminal and a Baltic Sea port in one of the largest deep strike operations against President Vladimir Putin's home city. As Russia-Ukraine tensions escalate, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the special military operation has now become a real war, blaming Western countries backing Ukraine. On WION Wideangle this week, we list the key infrastructure hit by Russia and Ukraine in recent times, and understand what makes Vladimir Putin visit military installations. And we also revisit the history of the Russia-Ukraine war.
So what are we going to do? What options do we have? There are options to leave the country, but for me, those aren't options. Our country is our country. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Russian roulette, or whatever they call it. That's how we're living right now.
We also spent the night at the shelter today because we were afraid there would be another airstrike. Going 2 days without sleep is really hard. Plus the stress and everything. It's really bad, to be honest. It's very hard to recover. We'll see.
On the 6th of July, US President Donald Trump claimed that a resolution to end the more than 4-year-old Russia-Ukraine war is getting closer than people realize, adding that he will discuss the Ukraine talks this week in Turkey at the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, summit.
Because I talked to him, I talked to President Zelensky, and I think that's all I've done. My whole life I made deals. That's, I guess becoming president was making a deal, right? It was like a lot of little individual things. In the end, it's making a deal. And that's what I do. And I do it well, and I know when people want to make a deal. I think he wants to make a deal. And I do feel that President Zelensky would like to get back to rebuilding his country as opposed to, having all of this death and destruction. Ukraine has tremendous potential. He understands that. We talk about that. He talks about that more than he talks about the war. To me, I think you might find that more exciting than the war. It's brutal.
Trump's remarks came days after he spoke with both Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about the ongoing war. Reportedly, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said he believed Washington's position on resolving the conflict remained unchanged.
У президента Трампа, у президента США достаточно последовательная позиция, и все...
US President Trump has a fairly consistent position. All these claims that he supposedly changes his views like a weather vane are, of course, untrue. He is consistent and convinced in his understanding of what is happening. Most importantly, he is open to hearing the information that Putin communicates to him. Secondly, both President Putin and President Trump have an understanding that their contacts will continue in the near future.
У президента Путина и у президента Трампа есть понимание, что их контакты будут продолжены в ближайшее время.
On the other hand, the Ukrainian president described his telephonic conversation with the US president as very good. According to a post on X, Zelensky said Ukraine is grateful for US assistance from Javelins and Patriots to political support, adding that America stands by us in defending our independence. He thanked every American heart that cares about freedom in Ukraine, Europe, and beyond. Despite the negotiations, the situation on the front lines has worsened over the last couple of days. On the 2nd of July, Russian forces have carried out a mass drone and missile attack on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv. In what the city's mayor described as a massive attack on the city. According to the head of Kyiv's military administration, 91 people were injured. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko said an ambulance station was among the places hit. Some neighborhoods had been evacuated as the airstrikes hit the city hours after Ukrainian President Zelensky had warned that Russia was preparing an attack. Ukraine accused Moscow of targeting civilian areas and said it would be wrong to equate the actions of the aggressor and a country defending itself. Kyiv declared a day of mourning after at least 30 people were killed in Russia's biggest attack on the capital.
Він бореться за те, щоб показати, що він перемагає. Йому треба продати своєму суспільству велику перемогу. Перемоги немає. Перемоги не буде. Тому і починає залякувати такими ударами, ну і іншою риторикою, залякувати Україну. Але впевнений, що не вийде, хоча партнерам треба не розслаблятися.
I live across the street. Right when the strikes happened, I was in the shelter there with all my neighbors. We heard there had been a very heavy strike, so we went outside to see where it had hit and started looking for people. Before the state emergency service arrived, we were helping people get out of this very house because the doors were blocked.
Допомагали вибратись людям, тому що були заблоковані двері.
And then, on the 6th of July, Russia unleashed another wave of missiles and drones at Ukraine, killing at least 22 people in attacks, exposing widening gaps in the country's air defenses. Rescuers were digging bodies from the rubble of a Kyiv high-rise ripped open in the overnight bombardment.
I felt that I needed to pray. My car in the yard was damaged too. Well, you see, a month ago it hit here as well. Everything was on fire here. This time nothing burned, but the damage is much greater. I think there are human casualties.
The Russians just want to destroy the people. I can't wrap my head around it. When people are killed, it's terrifying, and there's no safe place. You never know where something might strike. So in the end, all of Ukraine is an unsafe place.
At 1:30 a.m., a powerful hit occurred. A blast wave, all the windows blew out, and then it hit 3 more times. Glass was falling down. There wasn't a single pane of glass left in the apartment.
Стекла долетали. В квартире не осталось ни одного стекла.
This is Bonia, the cat who spent more than 24 hours inside the damaged apartment after the attack. Rescuers pulled the cat out after it was found hiding under a bed in a partially destroyed 8th floor building. The feline was handed over to Anastasia Sorokina, a friend of the cat's owner. According to Sorokina, Victoria survived the attack but lost her husband's brother and his wife, who lived in the neighboring apartment and were killed in the strike. Soon after Bonia was found, Sorokina informed the cat owner.
This is my friend's cat. She happened to be in the apartment at the time. She was renting an apartment from us, and they were pulled out at night. And on the other side of the building over there, There were 2 people who died.
We found him under the bed. He ran into the kitchen, where we caught him and took him away.
Kyiv and Moscow have launched volumes of drone and missile attacks, as long-range warfare between the two countries has intensified to its highest level since Russia's full-scale invasion began in February 2022. In fact, President Volodymyr Zelensky called on European allies to speed up efforts to create a domestic anti-ballistic system.
While this war continues, please help us get more air defense missiles. This is our top priority right now. We are capable of doing everything else ourselves. But when it comes to air defense, we need our partners' determination. Please, let more determination and more decisions for air defense be one of the key outcomes of this NATO summit in Ankara.
Ukraine has been striking Russian energy infrastructure at an unprecedented rate. Russia's defense ministry says it is intercepting the majority of incoming Ukrainian attack drones. However, the sheer rise in frequency and quantity of projectiles has resulted in a growing number of hits on strategic energy facilities in Russia. Data show that Kyiv's intensified drone campaign is spurring Russia's worst fuel crisis in decades. The campaign on Russian energy infrastructure has brought Putin's war closer to home than ever. Omsk oil refinery, Russia's largest, has halted operations following a Ukrainian drone attack. The strike on the refinery on the 6th of July, deep in Siberia, was one of Ukraine's longest-range attacks of the war, now well into its 5th year. An eyewitness filmed in the region showing flames and black smoke rising from an industrial area. The halt in operations at the plant is likely to impact fuel supply across the country. These attacks recently have forced more than half of the country's regions to impose strict limits on fuel sales, while residents have been queuing for hours at petrol stations. With a nearly empty tank, Nikita's car kept stalling as it inched forward in a long line at a filling station.
As I work as a driver both in a small car and in a large lorry, it is difficult at the moment. Fuel has become much more expensive and it's hard to refuel, so of course it's hard now.
I work as a taxi driver. I work until lunch, and after lunch I stand for a couple of hours at petrol stations. In Balashika, 2 days ago, I stood in a queue for 2 hours. Same thing there. People are standing in kilometer-long queues. They're holding it back. They want it to look like there's petrol, but there isn't. If they were selling it at the same pace as before, every petrol station would be empty in an hour.
Ukraine has also stepped up attacks on logistics and energy infrastructure in Crimea in recent weeks, contributing to fuel shortages and prompting authorities to declare a state of emergency in the peninsula.
Dear residents of Sevastopol, the power supply situation on the Crimean Peninsula remains challenging. We are carrying out repairs. We hope that power will be fully restored in Sevastopol within the next 24 hours. However, we have agreed with the head of the Republic of Crimea, Sergei Valerievich Aksyonov, to declare a state of emergency in our regions, both the hero city of Sevastopol and the Republic of Crimea, and to declare a regional emergency in both the Republic and the city.
On the 6th of July, Ukrainian drones struck Russian fuel tankers in the Sea of Azov, a fuel terminal in Crimea, and 2 S-400 Triumph long-range anti-aircraft missile systems. Over the past few days, Ukrainian drones have attacked a dozen tankers from Russia's Shadow Fleet that were delivering fuel to Crimea. The Sea of Azov is a key supply route for Russian forces in Crimea and other occupied parts of southern Ukraine. Crimea has long been a flashpoint between the two countries. To understand the roots of this war, we must look back. The tension between Russia and Ukraine goes back centuries. But the modern conflict began in 2014. After Ukraine's pro-Russian president Viktor Yanukovych was ousted during the Euromaidan protests. Russia annexed Crimea, a move that was widely condemned by the international community. This set the stage for years of unrest in Ukraine's east. Ukraine's ambitions to align itself more with Western countries, including its publicly stated interest in joining NATO, fueled the difference further between Moscow and Kyiv. By 2021, Russian troops began massing along Ukraine's border. Despite diplomatic talks, there was no resolution. On the 24th of February 2022, Russia's military moved in. Launching simultaneous strikes on major Ukrainian cities, including the capital, Kyiv. What followed was Europe's largest ground war since World War II. Moscow then called it a special military operation. Russian forces pushed toward Kyiv, expecting a swift victory, but Ukrainian resistance, backed by Western weapons and intelligence, held the capital. By 2022, Russia withdrew from around Kyiv, shifting its focus to other regions, including Donbas, Zaporizhia and Kherson. In September 2022, Russia unilaterally declared its annexation of areas of 4 Ukrainian oblasts: Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson and Zaporizhia. Ukraine struck back with lightning counteroffensives in Kharkiv and Kherson, reclaiming significant territory by late 2022. Through 2024 and 2025, peace talks opened and stalled repeatedly, with both sides trading ceasefire proposals. According to a report by Center for Strategic and International Studies, Russia's territorial control in Ukraine shrank in the spring of 2026. With Russian forces losing more ground than they captured in both April and May, a net loss of roughly 400 square kilometers. While Russia still holds roughly 20% of Ukrainian territory, its footprint stopped growing for the first time in the spring of 2026. In fact, President Vladimir Putin's drastically scaled back May 9, 2026 Victory Day parade in Moscow's Red Square for the first time in 20 years. The reason? The call to omit all heavy military hardware, such as tanks and ballistic missiles, was taken due to fears of Ukrainian attacks and growing public fatigue with the war. While Ukraine has launched a sustained campaign of long-range strikes on Russian energy and military infrastructure, Russia has responded with intense drone and missile barrages on Kyiv and other cities. By mid-2026, Russia claims incremental gains at a staggering cost. Putin claimed the Russian army captured 2.44 million square kilometers of Ukrainian territory, an area more than 4 times larger than Ukraine's entire pre-war size. Four years on, the war that began with tanks rolling toward Kyiv has become a conflict of drones, long-range missiles and economic endurance. And as the front lines shift by kilometers, the human cost continues to climb on both sides. Russia's decision to launch a full-scale invasion of Ukraine has now estimated the war's total casualty numbers to have increased to almost 2 million. Out of the staggering number of 2 million, the CSIS estimates that Russia has suffered 1.4 million casualties, and Ukraine is estimated to have suffered between 525 and 625,000 casualties. Experts say that in terms of casualties, the war is becoming much more costly for Russia than it is for Ukraine. Although both Kyiv and Moscow have regularly published estimates of the other side's losses, they have been reluctant to detail their own sides. Ukraine's use of low-cost drones capable of striking targets dozens of kilometers behind the front line has become a significant feature of the war. As of now, Russian forces are reportedly trying to counter Ukrainian mid-range drone strikes by disguising military cargoes and deploying powerful electronic jamming systems.
We struck the Starlink countermeasure system, the system that directly jams satellites. We recently struck it. I don't remember the exact date, but that's what happened. In other words, they're trying to do everything they can to make our work more difficult because we're hurting them.
Recently, President Putin made a rare frontline appearance, donning green military fatigues to claim breakthroughs in Russia's war effort. Putin's visit to the front line appeared to be part of an effort to challenge the narrative that Ukraine holds any military advantage. But the reality on the ground is different. In late June, Russian President Putin acknowledged that Russia is going through a difficult period as the Ukraine war deeply impacts the Russian home front.
Но многому нас научил, позволил почувствовать саму суть понятия гражданина России.
Given the current situation, it remains to be seen whether Putin will give in to international pressure and withdraw Russian forces from Ukraine. And would that truly mark the end of the 4-year war?